often the most accessible and affordable option to keep young people engaged during the summer. And not only just accessible and affordable, but we all know that summer camp is an educational supplement. The program blends both DOE academic instructions and DYC enrichment, and both essential components for child development. However, recent reports show of low attendance raises concerns over the all-world quality and effectiveness of the program, and also lack of evaluation to see if we are reaching the goals that we're trying to achieve. To address the issues, a strong partnership between DOE and DYCD is absolutely necessary. Effective communication and collaboration between those agencies and community-based organizations that deliver those services are prominent for its success, but we still continue to fall short. Today, hearing aims to explore ways to enhance this collaboration and strengthen the program. Because Summer Rising isn't the only time that these programs are working together, they work together all year long. And we must continue to look and evaluate to ensure that the collaboration is working and is effective and is equal. Specifically, I'm interested in hearing about DYCD's and DOE strategy to tackle low attendance and to improve program quality. Today, I hope that we can discuss new approaches to ensure that every child in the program receives a meaningful and enriching experience. I believe that with the right improvements, Summer Rising has potential to be an exemplary program that parents not only can depend on, but actively seek for their children's well-being. So everyone knows I visit summer camps all summer long because not only do I miss it, but I think that it's a necessity. And too often I hear parents saying that they would want their kids to explore and have more fun. And I think even when we're saying fun, it doesn't mean it doesn't need to be educational. And the instruction piece, I think, is necessary, but I think that we need to explore what does that really look like, because from the parents that I spoke to consistently, I heard that their children did not want to sit in class all summer. And as running a summer camp, I saw how you could bridge and infuse education in all the things that young people do. And we need to figure out how that is, and we should not just have a rigid schedule that says you can only do this from this time to that. We have a city that our kids could explore and learn from, and that's the direction we need to move in, and not just say that from 8 to 12 you need to sit in a classroom, and from 3 to 5 is when you should explore the city. That is not how children learn, and that's not the direction we should be moving in. And we need to move into a direction that makes the most sense for all kids across the city. I would like to thank my committee counsel, Christina, for her hard work preparing for this hearing, and as always, the A team back in District 16. With that, I will turn it back to Chair Joseph. And I would like to acknowledge Councilmember Lewis, who has joined us.
I would also like to acknowledge Councilmember Sanchez on Zoom. Finally, I'd like to remind everyone who wishes to testify in person today that you must fill out a witness slip, which is located on the desk of the Sergeant at Arms near the entrance of this room. Please fill out the slip. Even if you're already registered in advance, you'll be testifying in person. If you wish to testify on Introduction 700, 729, or 794, please indicate on the witness slip whether you're here to testify in favor or in opposition to the legislation. I also want to point out that we will not be voting on any legislation today. To allow as many people possible to testify. Testimony will be limited to 3 minutes per person, whether you're testifying in person or on Zoom. I'm also going to ask my colleague to limit their questions and comments to 5 minutes. Please note that witnesses who are here in person will testify before those who are signed into the Zoom webinar. I will now turn it over to Committee Counsel Nadia Jean-Francois to administer the oath.
Good morning. Now, in accordance with the rules of the council, I will administer the affirmation to the witnesses from the mayoral administration. I will call on each of you individually for a response. Please raise your right hands. And this includes everybody for Q&A as well. Thank you. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth before these committees and to respond honestly to council member questions? Emma Vadera, Angela Feloye, Laquana Chambers, Lanakita Parker Moore, Liana Wright, Danielle DiManjo, Cordelia Vev, Susan Haskell, and Daniel Gillen. Anybody I missed? Excuse me? Okay, Andrea Verso. And could you please make sure you fill out a witness slip? Thank you. You may begin your testimony.
Good morning, can you hear me? All right. Good morning, Chair Joseph, Chair Stevens, and all the members of committees on education and youth services here today. My name is Angela Faloye, and I am the Director of Summer Programming at New York City Public Schools. I am happy to be joined by Emma Vedera, Deputy Chancellor for Operations and Finance at New York City Public Schools, Susan Haskell, Deputy Commissioner for Youth Services at the Department of Youth and Community Development. I will always refer to that as DYCD for this testimony. Daniel Guyen, Assistant Commissioner for Youth Services Operations at DYCD, and multiple staff from New York City Public Schools and DYCD who work together to ensure the successful outcome of our city's summer programming. I would also like to thank Chair Joseph, Chair Stevens, and the Council for your long-standing partnership and support to ensure New York City students have access to enriching and engaging summer programming. Thank you. Summer Rising is a collaborative partnership between New York City Public Schools and DYCD to offer free summer academic and enrichment programming to 110,000 New York City students in grades kindergarten to 8. Summer Rising offers academic programming to students taught by New York City Public School staff and extensive enrichment programming provided by DYCD community-based organizations. I will also be referring to them as CBOs. Summer Rising provides the opportunity for students to learn, grow, play, and explore the city around them, from field trips to theme parks and museums to dance and art classes. Summer Rising provides breakfast, lunch, and a snack to all participants. Summer Rising also relieves childcare burdens on parents and families who may otherwise have to pay thousands of dollars for day camps for their children. The program also intentionally prioritizes serving some of our most vulnerable students, including our students in temporary housing, students in foster care system, and students with disabilities. Each year, we survey our families, staff, and students about their experiences for us to consider as we work to continuously improve. Here are excerpts from the 2024 Summer Rising Survey to families, staff, and students. 93% of parents who completed the survey believed their students looked forward to attending their summer program each day. 80% of upper elementary students and 73% of middle school students who completed the survey believed the summer program believed participating students enjoyed themselves. More than 3/4 of parents who filled out with the food provided in Summer Rising. 86% of parents were satisfied with Summer Rising transportation. In addition, almost 1/3 of parents whose children attended Summer Rising in 2023 believe that transportation was better in 2024. As we have continued to work together, we have made a series of changes to improve enrollment in Summer Rising. For summer 2024, we were able to open applications a month earlier than we had in prior years, providing placements to those who applied through the regular application cycle a month earlier than usual. We believe this helped parents and other stakeholders plan earlier and better for summer. In summers 2023 and 2024, away from a first-come, first-served application process to a more equitable process that allotted families more time to investigate and to apply to meaningful programs. We ensured a common application process for all and allowed us to prioritize some of our most vulnerable student populations in a consistent way. These students that we prioritized were students with academic need, students with a 12-month IEP for extended school year, D75, Chapter 683, and Autism Nest or Horizon, of course, students in temporary housing, students in foster care, and students with a local connection to the DYCD CBO or school community. Over 3,000 New York City public school staff, including general education teachers, special education intervention teachers, and English as a new language teachers, provided over 80 hours of instruction using vetted curricula appropriate for summer. Furthermore, New York City Public Schools provided a nurse, paraprofessionals as needed, a guidance counselor, and a transportation coordinator as additional staff at each site. All summarizing sites were supervised by a principal and assistant principal who worked collaboratively with the DYCD CBO program directors. In summer 2024, we provided yellow bus transportation to support over 4,200 field trips. This was double the number of trips taken on yellow buses in summer 2022. We were glad to work together to ensure that students were exploring and learning from all that New York City has to offer. But there is always room to improve for our students and families, and we and our partners at DYCD are already getting together to discuss how we can make the program stronger as we look forward to the next summer. We are working on possible answers to questions such as how can we continue to improve enrollment and attendance? How can we support our students in temporary housing and students in foster care in enrolling in the program? As just one example, we plan to invest in targeted summer support for multilingual learners. Multilingual learners in grades kindergarten through 8 who attend summarizing programs will be prioritized for instructional support from a bilingual education or English as a new language teacher as part of their academic day. Multilingual learners will receive instruction targeting language and literacy development and access to grade-level content that could include small group instruction or one-on-one support. This ensures English language learners continued right to receive bilingual instruction during the summer. Additionally, as part of our commitment to making summarizing accessible, we plan to continue to provide transportation to students with disabilities and students in temporary housing and foster care. Eligible students are guaranteed busing to and from their instructional program, and we will continue to provide rideshare options for students with disabilities, students in foster care, students in temporary housing, if they need it for the return trip home after 6 p.m. We appreciate the interest of the council, advocates, and the community in this important programming, and hope to make it even better for summer 2025. I would like to thank you for your time and advocacy on behalf of the students and families of New York City, and my colleagues and I are welcome to answer any questions. I will now turn it over to my colleague Susan Haskell, Deputy Commissioner of Youth Services at DYCD.
Thank you, Angela. Good morning, Chairs Stevens and Joseph, and members of the Children and Youth Commissioner for Youth Services at DYCD, and I'm joined today by Daniel Guillen, Assistant Commissioner for Youth Services Operations, and my colleagues from New York City Public Schools and DYCD. On behalf of Commissioner Howard, thank you for this opportunity to discuss the Summer Rising program. This past summer was a banner year for Summer Rising, offering roughly 115,000 K to 8th grade students the opportunity to participate in a full day of academic enrichment experiences, including field trips. We thank our 114 Summer Rising providers and New York City Public Schools for their partnership in operating 597 programs in 360 school buildings across the city. We also appreciate the Council's support for Summer Rising and our other vital summer programming, which kept young people engaged and safe this summer. The DYCD portion of the Summer Rising budget for FY25 was $151.7 million. After hearing feedback from parents, community-based organizations, the Council, and other stakeholders, we implemented a new enrollment process and improved the experience for families, schools, and our providers. Enrollment was launched 6 weeks earlier than last year, and the opportunity to apply remained open for applications beyond the initial enrollment period to open more opportunities for families. My schools allowed school administrators and community-based organizations to have access to the same portal to see applicant selections, and families were able to accept or decline with offers within the system. My schools also improved maps and search options to allow families to easily find programs and apply to as many as they wanted. After initial offers were made, families could add themselves to the wait list of other options and monitor their position. DYCD utilized application data to increase or reduce seats at CBO programs whenever possible. Through this process, we received a total of 160,000 applications. Summer Rising enrolled. The enrollment system improvements allowed 110,000 or 79% of applicants to receive an offer to a program of their choice compared to 68% last year. Beginning early in 2024, DYCD convened bi-weekly planning and coordination meetings with CBO staff and welcomed principals and school staff to joint sessions to coordinate messaging and services at Summer Rising sites. In partnership with New York City Public Schools and Change Impact, we offered a range of professional learning and technical assistance opportunities to provider staff to help develop staff skills. For example, we offered a program on effective strategies for supporting students with IEPs to highlight strategies for classroom management, including creating routines and classroom rules and structure to support student behavior, sensory supports, and regulation strategies, and preventing and addressing challenging behaviors. Other courses including supporting students who are newcomers, understanding mental health, and positive youth development. DYCD expanded Exploring Futures, which provided career readiness activities for middle school students, including an individualized curriculum to explore skills and interests. Exploring Futures incorporated field trips to CUNY schools and businesses such as Pfizer, Summer Stage, MLB offices, and Yankee Stadium. The initiative yielded a positive response as 70% of program directors noted the youth showed a continued interest in their career paths after completing the program. This curriculum has expanded into after-school programs and includes the support of the high school application process for 8th graders. I will now turn to the 3 bills on the agenda. Number 700 would create a college admissions counseling program within DYCD. New York City Public Schools is best suited to provide college counseling and guidance to high school students and offers individualized support based on student experiences and academic achievement. DYCD does support post-secondary education and college access. Career exploration and educational motivation are an integral part of our youth development programming, including field trips to campuses and workplaces, as I just discussed. In workforce programs at DYCD, for example, the Learn and Earn program provides college and career readiness programming to high school juniors and seniors in public schools who have the highest need. Programming is comprehensive and tailored to the needs of students, including career readiness, post-secondary planning, college tours, mentorship opportunities, academic support, and paid internships. In program year 2023, 65% of graduating participants went on successfully to enroll in college. DYCD's Work, Learn, and Grow program provides paid work experiences and accredited CUNY college course to high school students. Last year, 4,831 participants received college credit through Work, Learn, and Grow. In fiscal '24, DYCD supported HBCU-centric college tours and college prep activities. The 1,065 young people enrolled in Learn and Earn participated in a series of college prep workshops that included topics such as financial aid, portfolio development, and campus college life, to name a few. Additionally, over 290 young people visited over 14 colleges. Tours ranged between 1 to 7 days in length. Youth experienced museums and cultural institutions along the way. We're thrilled to report 25 students either committed or were on the spot accepted to a visited college. We will continue to incorporate activities that support college access in DYCD-funded programs, but we believe that direct college counseling and application assistance should remain under the auspices of the school system. Number 729 would require mental health services in Beacon and Cornerstone community centers. Beacon, Cornerstone, and other program areas provide essential universal supports for youth to thrive: positive peer relationships, caring adults, the opportunity to be engaged and learn new skills are the foundations of well-being that support children through their challenges and successes. DYCD offers some targeted approaches, for example, in partnership with our crisis management system efforts in communities that experience higher level of violence and trauma. There are times referral. DYCD ensures that providers are attuned to available mental health resources in partnership with the Department of Health and Mental Health and the Office of Community Mental Health and other services. DYCD-funded capacity building and technical assistance providers offer training to provider staff to help them identify and assess opportunities to make referrals when needed. We agree with the goal of connecting young people to mental health support in our community centers. We have concerns about the cost and implementation of number 729. We'd be happy to discuss in detail after the hearing. Finally, number 794 relates to the composition of the New York City Youth Board. The Youth Board is an advisory board with members elected by both the mayor and city council. This bill is important. There are currently 3 mayoral appointees on the board who are under age 25. The bill also includes a requirement for previous experience in youth welfare. The Youth Board includes many members who have spent their careers in youth development, but it also includes members who joined from the private sector. Those private sector members have provided valuable support to young people through their service on the Youth Board, offering opportunities for our workforce programs, tours of workplaces, and career panels, as well as special spaces for special events. We do not support changes to the Youth Board composition that would jeopardize those connections. Thank you again for the opportunity to discuss DYCD's programs. We look forward to continuing to collaborate with the council, advocates, providers, and young people to improve services. We are pleased to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Public advocate?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning. My name is Jemani Williams, Public Advocate, City of New York. I want to thank Chairs Joseph and Stevens and the members of the Committees on Education and Children and Youth for holding this hearing. New York City Public Schools are among the most segregated in the nation, which begins early in students' education and persists through graduation. Students of more color are disproportionately likely to attend under-resourced and overcrowded schools, and despite comprising 70% of the city's student population, receive just a small fraction of specialized high school offers. Black and brown students, as well as students with disabilities, English language learners, students experiencing homelessness, students in foster care, and students living in poverty are less likely to graduate from high school than their more privileged peers. Some of the barriers to students attending college, including the high cost of tuition and application fees, the need for timely financial aid education, and lack of access to quality school counseling. The same disparities that we see in achievement in our public schools are reflected in college, with Black, brown, and low-income students having lower rates of enrollments in bachelor's degree programs. Bachelor's degrees attainment can differ by as much as 76% between neighborhoods. For example, a Center for an Urban Future report found that 89% of those living on the Upper East Side and Roosevelt Island had a bachelor's degree, compared to 13% in Morris Heights and Mount Hope. High school counselors play an important role in access to college opportunities. But many under-resourced and overcrowded schools either lack a counselor or have too few counselors for their student population. According to data collected by the U.S. Department of Education, high school seniors who talked one-on-one with a school counselor were more likely to complete a FAFSA, attend college, and enroll in a bachelor's degree program. For these reasons, I introduced Intro 700, being heard today, which requires the Department of Youth and Community Development to establish a program that provides counseling resources and other support to high school juniors and seniors and their families in applying to college. This program would provide general information regarding the college admissions process and college readiness, as well as a checklist of information required to successfully complete a college application, provide information regarding how to access and assemble the data and records required to apply to college, counsel students and families regarding college options, including tips on how to present a competitive application, refer students and families to resources regarding financial aid, scholarships, and other college funding options, and lastly, require DYCD to engage in outreach to inform students and families about these programs. While not every student wants to attend college, we should be ensuring that all students have the opportunity and are fully equipped to make the best decisions for their futures. As a public school baby myself, from preschool and masters, very proud of the public school system, but there's a lot more to do to make sure that people access what's available to them. I do want to shout out CUNY and SUNY for making some recent changes that hopefully will get more students into college, but there's still a lot more to do. Thank you, Madam Chairs.
Thank you, Public Advocate. I think what we're seeing also is a couple of things I've always said. We don't advertise the great work that New York City Public Schools is doing enough. There are people that still are not aware of the amazing programs that New York City Public Schools offer versus our counterparts in the charter world. They advertise every little thing they do. So I think New York City Public Schools should really consider, I've always asked for that, a budget or advertisement budget to celebrate the great things that are happening in New York City Public Schools, not only the bad things, right? We have amazing P-Tech program, we have a College Now program, PA. When young people leave high school, they leave with an associate degree, debt-free, but no one knows that. Across the city, if I do a survey right now with parents across New York City, none of them would know that. They don't know we have a P-Tech program. They wouldn't know we have amazing CTE programs that are pathway to careers, because we keep it all bundled inside when we should be showing it off and selling it off to the public. So that's one way to attract parents and increase your enrollment. When we talk about enrollments, what are we offering parents? We have amazing programs, but we keep selling ourselves short. So I hope this year y'all take it into consideration. Cool. My co-chair will jump in. So how many students applied for Summer Rising?
A total of 160,000 students applied. So we had the main round offer, the main round application between March 4th and March 25th. There were 138,000 applicants during that period. And then we also had an additional 22,000 apply through the waitlist. We had the waitlist open the moment we gave out offers in April through the end of Summer Rising.
What percentage of students received their first choice of site?
83%. So that is 91,000 students. So let me start off by saying that with the first round of offers, we gave out approximately 110,000 offers. Of the 110,000, 83% received an offer to their first choice. And then, but I'll pause there, so there's more, story to tell. But again, of the 110,000 offers that we gave during the first main round, 83% received an offer to their first choice.
Chair Joseph, can I just add 2 pieces of context for that? Because as you know, we've worked really hard to think about how we maximize enrollment. This team over here, early in the process. One thing is, both of those numbers went up substantially from last year, which we just want to call out, in part because of changes made in the enrollment process, which we can talk through. So Susan mentioned this, but we were able to make offers to 81% of people who applied in that first round. We know that's the best time to make offers for kids, right? That allows families to plan ahead as opposed to through the waitlist process. Last year, that number was 68%. So that's a real improvement in terms of families who knew the end of March, also a month earlier. End of offers. Did I get that right?
April.
End of April, which was also early April, which is also a month earlier than last year. We had a lot more families who knew they had a place to go, and then the percentage of those families who got their first choice also went up to 83 from 79%. So credit the improvements.
Of those students, how many were placed on a wait list?
So from the main round offer, 26,000 were placed on waitlist. So in fact, waitlist from the main round offer goes in two parts. You have 26,000 who did not get an offer at all, so they were placed on the waitlist. And then we also gave students who did not get a favorable offer, meaning their top choice, their first offer. So if you did not get your first choice, you will also be placed on a waitlist. So in total, from the main round, we had 47,000. In essence, we believe that even though we gave you an offer, we wanted you to have that opportunity to be placed on a wait list that is higher than the offer we gave you.
And of those 26,000 that were placed on the wait list, how many got an offer?
So now, overall, close to 4,400 got an offer from that group. So one thing to preface is that, or to note is that during the main round offer, in addition to the 110,000 offers that we gave out additional 2,400 offers. Now these offers were not to the programs that the families had applied to, but these programs were in the same building. And we were very proactive to say, you know what, if the actual CBO program was filled, were there other CBOs in that building that had seats? So we gave out additional offers during the main round offer. So from those 26,000, I would say total about approximately 4,400 offers were given.
Okay. So how many students enrolled in Summer Rising 2023, and how many were enrolled in 2024? Was there a shift in numbers?
In terms of enrollment, so we had, for 2023 and 2024, roughly the same, about 115,000. So now this number includes also students who eventually were discharged as well. But again, roughly between both years, 115,000 students were enrolled in Summer Rising.
So you exceeded it by 5,000 extra students?
Correct.
Okay. And in 2024, what was the numbers?
So in both years, yes.
Both years, the numbers went up?
Same,
Okay.
exactly. Around 115,000 for both years.
And when we looked at, if we're gonna break down the data, right? When we looked at race and ethnicity, what was the enrollment like?
Give me 1 second to bring that up for you. All right, so looking at race and ethnicity, so in terms of summarizing 2024, for Asian, we had 7, would you like me to read through? Okay. All right, so for Asian students, we had 17%. For Black students, we had 27%. For Hispanic students, we had 43%. Multiracial, 1.8%. Native American, 1%. And then white, 9%.
Students in temporary housing, how many did we have?
We had 18,199, so about 15.8%.
Okay. And how many students living in shelters specifically?
In shelter specifically, 8,517.
Okay. Students in foster care?
1,265.
And English language learners?
23,794.
And our students with IEP?
26,997.
Can you repeat that for me?
26,997 in District 1 through 32, and then an additional 708 students in District 75.
And of the students with IEP enrolled in Summer Rising, attend D to 31 in District 1 to 32 during the school year?
So yes, that was 26,997.
And how about the students in our D75 schools?
708.
708. And how many students were in elementary school and how many were in middle school?
Elementary, 86,000. Middle school, 29,000 approximately.
And for the 2023-2024, how many students were DOE and how many were charter school students?
So for 2024, we had charter school, 10,638. Yes, for 2024. And then from district, we had 103,901.
And for the students in charter school, what year was the data you gave me?
2024,
And how about in 2023?
8,580.
We heard a lot about attendance. Can you talk to us about the attendance rate for Summer Rising?
I mean, the numbers, even, I know, and I want to say this, I want to start off, I know that we have come a long way. I want to also say thank you all for always listening to myself and Chair Joseph's feedback. I think we always come back with something and you guys look and try to adjust and fix. And so, you know, I think we've come a long way. One of the things I heard a lot this summer was it's gotten a lot better, but I think it was a lot of bumps those first couple of years. So I think we had nowhere else to go but up. And I think that we've been rising to the occasion, but I know there was a huge effort around trying to prioritize, obviously with like mandates, we can't turn away young people, but you know, when we have a program where we have especially young people who are struggling in the public school system and then parents are choosing to migrate out during the school year but come back for the summer, thinking about how are we prioritizing our young people first. And so just to hear the number of 10,603 young people, and listen, not all the kids are my babies, right? All of them, but just showing how are we prioritizing young people who are in public schools. And I know there was great effort around young people in temporary housing, foster care youth, and all these different criterias, but we're going in the wrong direction if we had 8,000 the year before and now we have 10,000, which means that 10,000 public school students who show up every day during the school year are not part of it because these young people or families are taking advantage of it, and rightfully so, but I just want to make sure that like whatever we're doing, we're prioritizing those families who are coming first. And so I just wanted us to just like kind of stay there for a moment because I don't want us to like skip over that because that's important. I guess it's not a question. Like, what are we doing to kind of like figure this out? Because that's a problem for me.
So could you restate, because you mentioned something, you said in terms of charter school students.
Yeah, you said the year before you had 8,000 and then this year you had 10,000. So are we recruiting for those parents? Like, what are we doing that like we are getting more charter school students and not necessarily on the public school side when parents are there? Because here's the thing, one of the things that we know, especially with charter school parents, a lot of times they're usually on top of the applications, they're filling the things out, right? Because to be in a charter school, you have to have some type of diligence, and they're already in that process. What is happening that is not happening with the public school families, and why are the charter school numbers increasing? And again, this is not an attack on them, but they often have programs in their schools, and like they'll have bridge programs, which can also attest to the attendance rates that are happening in our programs. Because it's like, okay, I need somebody to come here for 3 weeks, and I'm gonna sign up, and now we have that spot filled by them and not our young people. And so I just don't want us not to skip over some of the things, especially when we're seeing the numbers increasing.
Absolutely. In the grand scheme of things, again, we have 110,000 seats. We gave out over 110,000 seats. So 10,000 for charter school in comparison to
But it
the
increased
overall.
from the year before.
I understand that.
And so that means next year is gonna be more.
What we're also doing is, if you look at the priority structure, the first set of students that we prioritize are promotion endowed to the home school. And then also though, when it comes to prioritizing vulnerable students, we're not looking at where they're from. You can be STH in charter school, STH, as long as you're a New York City public school student, New York City student, regardless of whether you're charter or public school, we would prioritize you if you are vulnerable. So it could be that they could have come from that segment, but But long story short is that in terms of how we prioritize DYCD students who actually are connected to DYCD CBOs. We prioritize the local community. However, again, we do not choose where an STH student comes from or a student in foster care comes from.
I understand your point, Chair, and I think your point is well taken. I think the team has done and can share a lot of efforts and outreach to improve applications process among New York City public schools, applications among New York City public school students as well. And we obviously do get far more applications than we can serve already for the program each year, but understand your point on the data. I will say, and we can keep thinking about that. I will say, just because it was implicit in what Angela just said, is there are a couple of priorities that do only apply to New York City public school students, and we do see a higher offer rate by a bit for New York City public school students than charter school students when we actually look at those. So those two priorities you just mentioned only apply to New York City public school students, an affiliation with the school, an affiliation with a DYCD CBO program. I assume that's partly why we do see a higher offer rate for public school students than charter school students, which is also in here in the data.
Yes, so thank you for that. And definitely agree with my co-chair today that the numbers are going up. So I'm sure 2025, the numbers will go up I understand, they can be in charter school and still be a foster child. They can be a charter school and still live in temporary housing. But we're still seeing the numbers that are going up because my students can't go attend a summer programming in charter schools. So you see the role, if we were to reverse the roles, that's what would happen. So a couple of questions around attendance, and we saw this during the summertime, and there was a Chalkbeat article that said that attendance had dropped, that you guys had to send educators home. What do we do? How long does it take a child to fall off the roster for you to offer a seat to incoming child, and in the attendance, what are we doing to make sure students are coming, and how are we keeping them engaged, especially my middle school students?
So first, I'll speak to the attendance policy. So this year, the attendance policy, we had twofold. The first was, if you did not attend by the Monday of the second week, and we did not hear from you after multiple attempts, then we will remove that student and offer the seats to whoever is next in line on the wait list. So that was the first step. Then the second policy in terms of attendance was that if you did not attend...
I'm sorry, because this room I can't hear even with the earpiece on. You said by the second week, and could you bring the mic over a little bit?
So the second week, the first Monday.
Yeah, because you already speak stuff. Thank you.
Oh, okay. By the second week, the first Monday, if the student did not attend, and after multiple attempts by the CBO and school to reach out to the family, and they could not get any response from the family, that student will now be unenrolled, and that seat will be given to somebody who is next in line on the wait list. So that was the first part.
So I just want to be clear, isn't the program, what is it, 6 weeks?
7 weeks.
7 weeks.
7 weeks for elementary, 6 weeks for middle school, 7 weeks for elementary.
So we were already at 6 weeks because the first week they weren't there, and we are trying to figure this out by the second week, and then now we're going to be calling parents who probably already found other accommodations to come to the program. Do we see where that might be a challenge?
So before summer starts, and this is something I would like the YCs to please attest to as well, the CBOs are already reaching out.
I'm aware what the CBOs is doing, but that's not the issue here.
So, but we want to give leeway. We want to give leeway to families to say, we understand. And that first week also includes a holiday. It includes July 4th
which is part of some of the issue too.
Yeah, so we're giving that leeway to families. But again, by Monday, before that first Monday, I'm sure the CBOs and schools are already calling the families.
That's,
so by then,
because this, even with this piece, I think is where some of the frustration comes from, because when the CBOs ran camp, they would have their orientation probably like a week before, and so they would already have like a more of an idea, and so when we're already in the thick of camp, do you know how hard it is to have to sit there and call parents when you have these kids all day? Like, so I think even that process of saying we're waiting until the second Monday to do that is part of an issue, right? Like, because again, if camp has already started, it's already after the holiday, people are going away, you've already made accommodations, I'm not coming. And so again, everyone knows, I've said it for the last 3 years, I ran camp for 20 years. There was no way by the time camp started, I had the ability to actually say, I'm gonna go call off the wait list because my roster needs to be done. And so we would have our rosters done, had parent orientation at least 2 weeks before, met the parents, came in. So do we see where that piece is missing? Which is why I've advocated that we put the recruitment and enrollment back in the hands of the CBOs so that we would not be in this position. Because that Monday does not make sense. And that is not fair because we all know that the teachers and principals ain't making those calls. It is the CBOs making those calls. So that is not okay.
So, good morning, Chair. So,
You about to take up for them? Go ahead.
Could you give me can you give me 1 second?
So-
Can you give me 1 second?
Yes.
Let me acknowledge Councilmember Menon and Councilmember Hanif, who's on Zoom. And you may take it away, but I'm going to come back with a follow-up just to line up. So New York City Public Schools, get ready for me.
So, I want to highlight the fact that you, Chair Stevens, last year flagged this for me, and in planning for this year, we wanted to be more intentional about the application process, right? And what that meant was that CBOs were able to get access to who was applying. So that way they can see the contact information, they can call those parents ahead and say, hey, we do have a parent orientation come up. Are you going to join us? Are you going to be part of this? That way we can work through that wait list, because that is correct. It is a key component of what happens in the application process.
Could I tell you one of the things that I got from parents this summer? I had one parent, and they were in the Chalk Bee article, who talked about the CBO had orientation, but the principal refused to meet with them. They did not have an orientation. So where's that disconnect?
I'm sorry, you mentioned that?
I had a parent, and they were in the Chalk Bee, you guys go back to the article, they even talked about it. They tried to meet because the principal told the CBO they couldn't have a parent orientation, so the parent only met with the CBO. The principal refused to meet with them and did not allow the CBO to have a parent orientation. So where's that disconnect, and why is that even happening? Because I know part of the requirement on the CBO side is required to do a parent orientation, but the principal didn't let them have it, and they wouldn't meet with parents, and the principals wouldn't meet with the parents because they wouldn't give them the space.
And in those instances where there is a conflict between, at the school level, between the school leadership and the CBO, that gets escalated to both New York City Public Schools and DYCD, right? And making sure that we're tapping into the district and the superintendents to address these issues. Because part of the entire process is that orientation happens, that the collaborative planning happens, where it includes how we're engaging with families, the families that are hard to reach, and getting those contact information and following up through this entire process leading into the start of the program. In that instance for that school is a really unfortunate opportunity that we weren't able to capture that and resolve that quickly, but there was an entire escalation plan to make sure that those partnership situations wouldn't happen in the first place.
So what is the escalation with the principal who wouldn't allow them to do their job and would refuse to meet with parents, which I think, by the way, is crazy. So let's just go there. Principals saying they're not meeting with parents, that is not okay with me, and refuse to meet with the parents. So this is not a DYCD question, so I'm not asking y'all to answer it. I'm asking DOE to answer this because that is a problem for me.
But it can't if it's a collaboration, right? And then that's one of the things we always talk about. Agencies refuse to talk to each other. If this is a collaboration and a partnership, the dialogue has to start early. You have to work hand in hand in order for it to work, right? If the end goal is to deliver a programming for child, especially the ones that are mandated, you have to work hand in hand. And I think principals, superintendents have to be in the conversation. CSA has to be in this conversation to make sure your principals are doing what they're supposed to be doing. And that's not the first time I'm hearing complaints. So I'm gonna call that all stakeholders get together and figure this out in 2025. Because I don't wanna be here next year having another hearing on how this is. I wanna hear what improvements, and I wanna hear the amazing things that are happening on the ground. And she just want to go back to camp. So, New York City Public Schools.
Thank you for that. So, as Daniel mentioned, we work well and hand in hand We have meetings every week, especially during summarizing. And those meetings are especially to tackle escalations. If something like this had been escalated through DYCD to me, immediately I would have met with the Division of School Leadership to address the matter. We would go through the superintendent's team to immediately reach out to the principal. We take parent communication, parent engagement very seriously. So again, once matters like this were escalated through DYCD to me, immediately I reached out to the appropriate stakeholders to swiftly resolve. And we will continue to do this in subsequent summers.
Well, thank you. I have a question. Promotion and doubt students, are they required to apply for summarizing in order to participate in the CBO enrichment programs?
I'm sorry, could you repeat your question?
Students with promotion and doubt, students that are mandated for what we used to call summer school, are they required to apply for summarizing in order to participate in the CBO programming?
So when it comes to promotion in doubt students, at the time of the application, we wouldn't know which students are mandated. We don't know that. But what we do is we prioritize. Anybody attending both the academic portion and enrichment portion, you need to apply for a summarizing seat. We want to make sure that there is interest there. And so again, we do prioritize when we know that you are promotion in doubt. When the wait list opens up at the time where we do know a student is mandated and that mandated student has now placed themselves on the wait list, they are the first priority. But again, a mandated student will get the instructional programming regardless of if they apply to summarizing.
So if I have a promotion in doubt, I would automatically be enrolled. What if I don't apply for summarizing and I'm mandated to attend
So yes, if you are mandated and you did not apply for summarizing, you will only get the instructional programming. That is what happens. But again, summarizing, we want to ensure that we're giving seats to families and students who are interested. The only way we know you are interested is when you apply through My Schools. And at the time when we give out the main round offers, we do not know who is mandated, but we know who is promotion in doubt. So that is the first priority. The first priority is to give out offers to promotion in doubt students. Now, when we now turn over to the waitlist period, let's say June, when we now know a student is mandated, if they did not apply to summarizing during the main round, but they are now interested in not just the academic portion, but the full day, they put themselves on the waitlist and they are the first priority.
Okay. About that. So when we talk about students that's mandated, what kind of curriculum do you use for students that are mandated, and what's the assessment look like?
I would invite my colleague from the curriculum team to speak on this matter.
Meanwhile, let me acknowledge Councilmember Narcisse.
Good morning. So the curriculum isn't differentiated for students who are mandated or not. The curriculum is selected by the district. They select their ELA and their math curriculum, and then that curriculum is in place for all schools within the district. Then within each school, the principal and the teachers who are there work to differentiate curriculum for the students.
What assessment do you use that allow by the time of summarizing end that child is moving on to the next grade?
So there are assessments within each of the curriculum, and those assessments are used and become part of the portfolio for the students who are designated promotion and
So you
doubt.
still do portfolio work?
Correct.
And what kind of curriculum are you using?
The portfolio uses the DOE rubric, the students, then for each one of the standards that they're using.
And what
for
curriculum
math
is
or
that?
ELA. I'm sorry?
And what curriculum?
The
What curriculum do you use for the summer?
So there are 3 different curricula for the English. You want me to list them?
Yes, ma'am, for the record.
So there are 3 different curricula in play for the summer for ELA. There's Savas Summer Impact, Scholastic Scholar Zone, and NSSI ELA. For math, there are 2 curricula that districts could choose from. That's the Curriculum Associates Math Ready and the NSSI Math.
And how much PD do you provide for the educators?
So the professional learning happens dependent on each one of those curriculum providers. They're 2 days prior to the beginning of summer school where curriculum.
Are paraprofessionals included in that training?
Paraprofessional learning is different from the teachers, but they're also provided with professional.
Well, let's say I have a one-to-one and my child has an IEP, how can I turn key if I'm not teaching the paraprofessional the same thing?
They also have professional learning, just saying it's separate from the teachers. I'll turn it over to Andy for the.
Before you go.
Sorry,
Yeah.
yes.
She's not
I'm
on.
No, I just had a question. So you said that they do their PD, you said 2 days prior, or they have 2 days designated?
There are 2 days designated prior, and
How early
there's,
before?
sorry?
How early before summer camp starts is this training taking place?
Well, between the end of
Oh, I know the tight gap.
tight,
Don't get me
tight,
started.
tight,
A lot
tight
of staff be burnt
schedule.
out. Part of the problem. Don't get me
Correct.
started. But, so they have 2 days, so it's 2 days before school is ending, they have 2 days of this training, and then they have to be ready to go first day of camp.
Yes.
I just wanted to make sure we put that on the record.
And once they're finished with the portfolio, then they're moved on to the next grade.
Correct.
And what does that portfolio looks like?
So I'm going to turn that over to Danielle D'Amico, okay?
Good morning, Chair Joseph and Chair Stevens and the council members. Good to be here with you today. Before I talk about portfolios, I also wanted to add to curriculum and the training for teachers. One of the things that we also included are office hours for teachers where they can go online and speak directly to some of the curricula support, as well as online resources that are available. So there are sample lessons, videos for supports as well around the curriculum. Promotional portfolios start, as you know, in the spring, where schools look at students' work aligned to standards and multiple measures to talk about readiness and preparation for next year. And what we do in the summer is those portfolios actually go to the summer school site, and teachers working through the assessments and the curricula add student work in alignment with the rubric to assess where students are towards the standards and to measure readiness. And then we take those portfolios, which go back to the school, and plus the beginning of year assessments, and determine MTSS supports, assessment supports, and enrichment supports for students starting right at the beginning of the school
And
year.
if that student doesn't complete the portfolio, what happens?
I'm sorry?
If the student does not complete the portfolio, what happens?
So we do everything that we can to get the student to complete the portfolio, but if a student is promotion in doubt, it is a recommendation that the student may not be promoted to the next grade level if they're not showing progress from what the school's determined in the spring.
And what do you have for students who are not mandated but want to apply for Summer Rising? What set of workplace enrichment do you have in place for them?
So one of the things that we did ask for in terms of training and presentations that the different curricular programs offered were within the task. It is access for anyone to enter. So it can start in a low space where everyone would be able to see on grade level standards work, but then there are also different types of activities where students can go deeper and more accelerated on the same content.
The students who don't have promotion in doubt but attend Summer Rising, what enrichment do you have in place for them?
In terms of the curriculum,
in terms of I'm coming to your school, I don't need to be here, but I'm here? What do you have in place for me? Are you training me for the next upcoming grade? I'm an 8th grader. Are you getting me ready for 9th grade? What does that look like?
So I think, as we said, the curriculum is very similar, but the tasks and opportunities for students to have high-level accelerated book clubs, different levels of research, but they're all really looking at the same content. It's just the way that principals and teachers are organizing groups of students and offering the extensions that are available within the curriculum.
So no one thinks it's a little crazy that the teachers have 2 days of PD, and then they have students who are mandated to be there, and then students that they then have to, who are not mandated to be there, and obviously probably don't need that additional support, but might want other like accelerations. I think like in theory this sounds like it makes sense, but like this is part of the challenge where young people are like, I'm bored, I don't want to be here, because the teacher is juggling all of these things. And granted, they do it all year, right? Because that's part of their work, right? But now we've like added 2 more months of this. Like, so I want us to just kind of think about that. Like, what does that really look like? And does that like make sense? And is this the best stress of resources, right? When we're thinking about young people who used to, and let's be clear, summer school, when they had summer school, they were in there, it was smaller groups, they were able to get additional attention, able to get more supports. And now it's literally just a bigger classroom all year long, when they could have gotten some additional supports and prepared them better for the school year. And so like, that's why for me it's a little mind-boggling to wrap my heads around.
So I think it's twofold. And
I've been out here, there's some teachers doing some great work and all the things, but that's not what, so I don't want you guys to explain it away like, oh, I know teachers are doing their thing, it's hot, I ran camp, I live, whatever. But I just want us to also think about, does this make sense as far as even thinking about these young people who need that additional support? And we'll be able to get additional attention from a teacher for 2 months and really help them excel for the next school year. Is it preparing them the way they should be prepared? Which was my question even was gonna say, like, what are the goals around this program? Because it started out as a reaction from COVID and saying these kids have been out of school for all this time, let's do this. And so have we sat down and said, okay, let's look at this, and does this make the most sense for the lack of resources we have, right? Because we had federal money before, we had all these things. Does this make the most sense for us to continue with this model this way? So like, what are the academic goals that we're looking at, and what are we really trying to achieve?
So I think some of the things that you had said in the beginning is over the past few years, we've really strengthened our partnership with DYCD, and the learning is really, and the collaboration between principals and our CBO partners have allowed us to bring certain fun and engaging things into the classroom. So one of the things that we know is that our DYCD counselors are in the classrooms with the students and the teachers and the other supports.
Which I also have a problem with, because the teachers leave at 12.
The teachers what?
They leave at
I
12.
also have a problem with, because the CBO staff is stretched because they're there from 8 to 6, and teachers leave at 12. And so that's also a problem, because they do push in during that portion of the day. And let's also not pretend like there's not a partnership all year, right? Like, we cannot continue to talk about Summer Rising as if it's this anomaly and it's separate. These CBOs are in these schools all year long. We know that there's a collaboration, a partnership. Like, we know we need each other. We work interconnected. But I'm just, again, just saying, like, does this make the most sense? And I think that we are at a critical moment where we need to stop and say, does this make, in this model in this way, and how's it moving forward? And so, yes, they work all year together. They do push in. The group leaders are in there, which I'm like, well, why aren't the teachers pushing in the afternoon portion, in the enrichment portion? Why is that not something we're doing when we're talking about collaboration? And I get it, it's their contracts, whatever, but it's also like, so they have a contract, so they leave and get replenished, where my CBO people are there and like working a crazy number of hours. So it's just some of that stuff that just kind of like grinds my gears. I'm gonna shut up because I feel like I'm going on a tangent.
And it also did allow us to bring other experiences into the classroom, like STEM activities, healthy baking and cooking, chess, mural painting across the schools that students were proud to return to their schools and show that their work was happening. All of those things allowed for opportunities to happen throughout the day.
But that's done all year long. Like, it's not, these The after-school programs are there. They do that type of work all year long. And so, again, that's why I'm just stressing, like, I think we're at a moment where we need to stop and say, is this making the best sense? Because if we have students who are mandated to be there in promotion and doubt, why are we not focusing on them and saying, like, let's give them the attention that they need? And the CBOs are already doing it, so they've done it in the past where, you know, again, we all know that even young people being in summer camp, that's about keeping summer learning loss, right? We don't want them to lose summer learning loss. And we know that that's what's the case, and it doesn't need to be in a classroom. It doesn't need to be in a classroom because we know that these programs are educational supplements and not just babysitting. And so that's why, like, it's not just saying, like, oh, parents, they don't have a lot of options. And so let's give them options that actually are a real option, because we're kind of, let's be clear, we're at a place where we're doing 12-year school.
Chair Stevens, I wanted to just add briefly, like, we aren't running the same program that we ran in 2021, and I appreciate you acknowledging that we are listening and we are making improvements, and we will continue to do that year after year. I think that where we were in 2024, we really saw, to your point, like, the strengths of the partnerships. I feel like this model, it is different than a traditional or previous camp model, but really, I think when we look at the benefits that we get from this partnerships, the strength of having the teachers and the camp counselors for elementary students in the morning, the strength of enhancing the experience for middle school students because they have both the academic and the enrichment, that we really, in our reflection year after year, are seeing just more and more the strengths of this partnership.
And I think it's also important to note that you're right, this is happening all year round, but not to this scale, right? Prior to the launch of Summer Rising, this was happening in smaller cohorts. A holistic model like this wasn't offered to everyone. And I think we're all big believers here of access, and the fact that now much more young people and families are able to tap into this academic and enrichment support full day is something that is amazing, and we want to strive to do better on in the process, but it's important that this key feature of it, a balanced model and get it as balanced as possible, is something that we can continue and develop.
So I'm going to ask this again. So what's the plan for, again, we've mentioned it. I come to your school, to your Summer Rising. I'm not mandated to be there. There has to be a different approach for that student that comes in, and that's why some of them started staying home. Because I wanted to find out what was the attendance rate in 2024, so you can also look at the holistic approach and see what is working, what's not working, and how many kids do we have in a classroom during Summer Rising. That's also going to tell me a lot. How many students are sitting in front of a teacher during Summer Rising?
So out of the offers that we gave,
Can you speak up, please?
Oh yes, out of the offers that we gave, we had 101 students attend at least once. So that's a large number.
Where did they go?
Oh, to the Summer Rising sites.
No, you said 101 students showed up.
101,000 out of the 110,000 offers that we
Where
gave.
did the 9,000 go? Did we track that data to see what's happening?
We will keep that under advisement and do that.
Absolutely.
So now, this is, in terms of year over year, this is similar to what happened last year as well. But thank you for that, and we will continuously improve. That's why we are here. In terms of attendance, attendance has been steady. In fact, attendance has been steady both last year and even before the pandemic when it comes to mandated students. DYCD can also attest to their attendance as well, which is similar to ours. But in terms of attendance, with real numbers, we're looking at 61%, 61.5% in 2024, 63.4% in 2023, 59.4% in 2022. Now, again, this is consistent even...
What's the standard attendance rate across the city? It's not 68%.
You mean school year? You mean city?
Yeah, school year. What's the standard?
I would like somebody in enrollment to speak to that.
We'll get you that number by the end of the
But
hearing.
68% is not nothing to celebrate.
I
68%, what are we celebrating? Where are those kids? If 9,000 kids go missing in our school system, I would like to know where they are and what are they doing and how are we doing outreach to those families to find out why they're not sitting in our seats. So it's 68% for me is not good enough. And you know, like Chair Stevens, I've been in the trenches 22 years, so 68%, we got a lot of work to do. What happened to those 32% of our students?
So we will get you the number on what the school year attendance is. I will say I don't think we actually see it as the same thing in terms of the comparison, right? This is a free, optional program that we intentionally make available without saying you have to come 65% of the time or 70% of the time. We know we see trends over the course of the summer. We have fewer students later in the summer. That could be because that's what family plans look like, which is fine, right? We allow that level of flexibility. I'm not saying there's not always room for improvement, and this is something we are collectively looking at closely in terms of what is the student experience. How do we make sure we're enrolling kids who actually want to be there, which is one of the pieces of improving enrollment at the beginning of the process when families are actually making planning decisions, as opposed to popping a kid onto the enrollment roll in July and realizing that's probably, that person already has something else planned, right, which is a part of the challenge. So I would say I do think that it is different from school year and that we intentionally make it flexible for families to be in and out, to not mandate a certain thing, to allow them to opt out a couple weeks. We could change that, I suppose. We do talk long and hard about how to change this program every year for whatever it's worth and continue to try and improve. That is not something we've been looking to change because we think that flexibility in a free program is actually appropriate. I think on the 9,000 students, I do think it's a fair question. Some of those are the students who were originally enrolled. The students that Chair Stevens was speaking about were originally enrolled. We did some outreach. They show up in our enrollment numbers, but they don't show up in our attendance numbers. So some of them are those students that are explaining that part of the differential as well, or a similar student who might have gotten an offer later in July, said, yes, I want this, then actually they didn't, because by then they were, of course, doing something else. And so it's some of those situations, too, that are leading to that gap between the 101 and the 110. The one other thing I will say is just, we do see a lot of that as how do we think about the upfront enrollment process to get as many folks in by April, right? Thank you, Angela, for the April date. We do think those are the families that are more likely to come. They're going to be able to plan around this. That's actually one of the reasons we made the change around mandated and promotion in doubt. We were holding back students. We were holding back seats at what we think is the critical stage for enrollment for students who we didn't know yet who they were, and we didn't know if they even wanted the CBO portion of the experience, right, which we know is a limited thing. So it's a challenging piece, the mandated and promotion in doubt piece, but given it is a scarce resource, I think we've thought we really want to make it available for kids who raise their hand, kids and families, and say, I want this full set of the experience, and that is one of the reasons we changed that policy as well, because we think as many kids as we can, over-enroll a bit if we need to, way up in April so families can plan, is how we're going to get students to come and keep coming.
How does, we were seeing that in certain areas there were a wait list, in certain areas you had a lot of open seats. How did you deal with that?
Could you please restate the question?
There were areas where you had wait lists, and there were certain areas where you had a lot of open seats. How did you manage that?
One thing we did in collaboration with DYCD was to understand where we had open seats, and thanks to the My Schools team, Office of Student Enrollment, we made it available so families could actually filter in My Schools to understand where the seats were available and then to apply. We also had that information on our website. Long story short is that we were encouraging families to please continuously check My Schools to understand where those seats are available, to please apply to them.
What accommodations were made for parents who did not have access to My Schools?
Great question. We ensured that school-based staff, such as parent coordinators, were able to apply on their behalf during the main round offer and also on the wait list as well. We also gave access to, of course, CBOs. CBOs could apply on behalf of their families. And then even the students in temporary housing staff, students in foster care staff, we gave them My Schools access. And in fact, we had over 8 trainings to different stakeholders saying, hey, we are giving you access. This is how you apply on behalf of families. And of course, we welcome continuous improvement ideas.
How successful was that?
Oh, to our knowledge, especially, through the survey as well, it was successful. And again, I continuously say that any improvements that are needed, let us know.
How many students are sitting in summarizing classrooms?
So we do have a cap size of 30 students. That is the maximum.
30 students.
That's the maximum.
That's a lot of kids.
We take into account, attendance rates as well, but at the end of the day, it's also at the discretion of the principal, based on the capacity of the building. But the maximum, again, I'm repeating, the maximum is 30 students.
And everyone is in the same room, whether you're mandated or not, everyone's in the same room.
Correct.
So that's what we were talking about earlier. So the students who will need the more academic support are lost in the crack because they're coming from a regular 10-month school year with 30 kids, and here I am in Summer Rising with another 30 kids. Where are you ever going to see them? We're not going to see them. We're going to lose them in the crack again.
And just to jump in really quickly, there was a survey done by UNH, and one of the things that the parents highlighted was the one-size-fit-all model, just even around this, and just one of the parents was concerned because their daughter was in a talented and gifted program, and they were in a classroom with general ed and special ed students, and they had major concerns about how the teacher was not able to differentiate what the students needed and the academic supports. And so this to me is just like a highlight of yes, in theory it sounds okay, but that just is a lot because you have students at such different levels. They said that they ended up pulling her out because that just was not something that they felt was beneficial. And so again, I think that this is an area that has to be addressed, and we can't just keep saying well, this is an issue, right? If you have a student who is talented, gifted, because we can't forget about them, they're part of the program too, right? And then we have a student who needs additional support, and yes, you can put a para in there, but they're still not going to get the support that they need. We don't do that during the school year, so then why would we do this during the regular year? But I just wanted to highlight that because I was just looking at some of the data from the survey, and that was one of the things that was glaring around parents and their feedback that they did with over 700 young people and parents across the city.
And quick question, students with IEP that require a one-to-one paraprofessional in Summer Rising, is that provided for the student?
I'm gonna let it.
You can go ahead. And once
Before Andy comes up. So one of the things that we did specifically speak with principals about is the learning experience, the heterogeneous learning experience and what that looks like. But there were also opportunities for principals and teachers to program differently to meet some of the needs and address some of the acceleration that you were speaking about, Chair Stevens, as well. I think we can continue in this work to make sure that principals are aware of some of the suggestions and recommendations that are coming from families like you just described from the survey.
Thank you so much for the question about paras. For Summer Rising, we go beyond the IEP and we use a summer accommodation form. And that's where we have teachers who know the student best say, what is the support that this student needs in order to be successful in the classroom? So even if a student does not have a one-to-one peer on their IEP, they may have a one-to-one peer support when it comes to a Summer Rising classroom. This year, we had 29,110 summer accommodation forms were completed. We had a new process that resulted in significantly more completion than we had in the past. When we look at those forms by the teachers who know their students best, we saw that 2,209 students were recommended for a one-to-one PIRA, and we had 15 and 60 students who are recommended for a group para, so size of 2 to 3. When we look at what were we able to do in terms of providing support for those paras, on day-to-day basis, we had over 100% of the recommended paras were staffed. That does not mean that every student who had a one-to-one para had that para that day. So I want to be very clear about that. That's due to a vacancy or an absence. But we did have 105% of the paras that were recommended were staffed on a daily basis through paras and sub-paras.
So in the academic part, what about the enrichment in the afternoon? Is support provided for the students who need that?
Yes.
Yes, so support continued throughout the rest of the program day. And in preparation for the afternoon, there was training and professional learning supports in person and remotely in the weeks leading up to the start of the program. And CBOs did also have access to the summer accommodation plans as well. So we wanted to be very intentional on what the necessary supports would be implemented for.
And we also know that our students with disabilities sometimes could not participate in the second portion because of transportation. Is that something you guys are looking into?
Sorry, I was working on getting the attendance number. It's 89.
Thank you.
It's
Keep working.
89.4% during the school year. But as we said, we do think that's a different circumstance and are doing a lot of work to try and bring that number up as well. Transportation, 6 p.m. transportation, is that what you were asking about?
Yes, especially with our students students with disability who sometimes cannot participate in the second portion of Summer Rising because of transportation. I think it stops running at 3, and if the program ends at 6, they are, and that's a burden on a family as well. So, is there anything in the works to say? I know we have ride share, but the students can't ride by themselves, right? So it's a catch-22.
So as you know, we agree this is a real challenge and one that we have been working over the past few years to figure out what we can do to address within our current bus contracts, which I know you all also just spent a lot of time on, but I am going to touch on that because it is the core of the challenge. Under our current contracts, the busing's at 3 p.m. We have looked at various ways to address that. As you know, what we really want to do is get new bus contracts that allows us to do many things, including 6 p.m. busing in summer, after school, all those kinds of things. Happy to talk more about why we are not able to do that right now. In the absence of that, which we have looked at a couple of times, we do provide rideshare for mandated students. That's students with disabilities, students in temporary housing, students in the foster system. We do work to make sure families realize that while that is not ideal, it is available right at the beginning of the application process, so they understand what is possible for them and can plan around that. And that is where we are at this moment. We have looked and are continuing to look at whether there's versions of that that could include a chaperone or someone to avoid the need for a family member to go with the student. That's not something we're currently doing. We are looking at it. When we do have a parent use it, as you know, but just so others know, we do then also give the parent a ride back to wherever they need to go, in addition to a ride with the school with the student. Still not ideal. What we really need is new contracts that allow us to do the 6 p.m. busing.
But the transportation has been going on since 2021. So I believe by now we should have at least something in place.
And what we have in place at this point is rideshare that we're continuing to promote, make more easily accessible, improve the processes for. But yes, we want to fix this too with real yellow buses.
And NYC bus in the non-for-profit part can't pick up the kids at around 6?
That's not something we can do right now, no. So Nice Bus, same as the others, has the contracts, and they're not available to do that. But this is top of our list for as we go into new contracts.
Chair Stevens?
Which we are not getting at this moment in time, as you know.
Councilmember Narcisse?
Thank you, and I know you've been doing amazing work, both of you, with your passion, but I have a couple of questions. I didn't know I was gonna be called right away. Let me start by the trip, like the field trips that you're having. And thank you thank you for the work you've been doing, because I will tell you that your program is very popular. So my question for the field trip, I see 4,200 field trips. Where do we take the kids? Are we taking them outside of the city, or they're all within the city?
So there is a balance of trips that happen in the city and outside of the city, and it's very diverse. So just gonna run off a couple of locations. One, because I'm a Yankee fan, we did implement trips to Yankee Stadium, to the MLB offices. I'm sorry? We did do
So now you took time for my time.
Yeah, and we did do amusement parks, so I do wanted to flag that to Adventureland, Queasy Amusement Park, the Ninja Park, bowling alleys, theaters, Chelsea Piers, escape rooms, the Botanical Gardens, Intrepid Museum, the Brooklyn Cyclones game, Pfizer as part of the Exploring Futures component, also college tours through the CUNY Explorers program for our middle school youth, as well as other, well-noted museums across the
I love
city.
that, because what I always said, when you take children out of the space that they have, so limited for some of them, when you take them outside of that zone, you open their eyes for a better future. I love that filter. When I was a kid, I love that. I see languages, multilingual learners. What are the languages? I don't know if my colleagues already asked that question, and I'm sorry that I'm late because the traffic was bad for me. So the language, what are the languages you're offering? Can I give the languages?
So in terms of the languages, what we strive to do is understand the needs of the students and provide the appropriate services. In terms of data, that's something that we can get to you. I don't have that information right now, but again, what we do is assess the needs of students. We provide that information in our databases for principals to understand the need and who to hire. And based on the need of the students, we provide the services.
In the application, do you have questions like showing the intent of the, I'm trying to get the best way to understand the enrollment process, because now I'm hearing that a lot of folks they did the application, they want the children together, and the percentage of attendance, according to my colleagues right now, the question they asked, not attending. Do we have a question where there is kind of like, how could I say, like the follow-up, how you're gonna do the commitment, those are the things in the questioning to make sure that we're taking it to the people that need it the most, because you have a waiting list and you have people out there that want to be in the programs.
Thank you so much. We do have a period where we are heavily reaching out to families to accept their offer. And in fact, the process of accepting the offer is a vital piece. We worked in collaboration with DYCD to say, hey, DYCD, what aspects of the enrollment are there gaps? We learned that DYCD requires a supplemental form, information on the supplemental form, such as allergies, such as emergency contacts. So we put that in an enrollment system. So when you get your offer, we heavily outreach that you must accept that offer to let us know you are coming. When you accept that offer, you must put in information needed by DYCD CBOs, such as emergency contact and allergy. So that process is there. But after a certain period, to also take into account for families who might not have access to internet, for families of vulnerable students, after a certain period, we auto-accept. But initially, when you get your offer, in that offer letter, and I'll invite Office of Student Enrollment to please follow up. In that offer, we're saying we need to know if you are coming or not, and you must accept that offer by a certain date. But again, to account for various family situations, after that certain date, we auto-accept for everybody. We don't say, because you did not accept your offer is invalid.
Okay, how does DOE communicate programs expectation and a daily schedule to parents, and how families provide feedback on the programs?
So great question. So that is something that is done on the ground and that is autonomous. It's dependent on the principal. So we leave that to the principal. But of course, we have what we call our operations guide, where we make it clear that you should be communicating to your families. But in terms of the actual process, we leave that up to the principals, because we know they know their community. They've been engaging with their families during the school year, so they know what is best, and we are confident to provide them with the autonomy to do that. But we do welcome suggestions here today. If you feel there are areas of improvement in engaging with families, we do welcome your suggestions.
Chair, is that okay to, because I have two more questions to ask. Okay, one more? Okay, how many students, let me break because my time is short. On the waiting list, because you have a big waiting list, I know that for a fact in my district. So do you give those waiting list folks a priority at the second cycle?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Same priority as in the first main round. And if you'd like us to discuss the priority, the
All right.
Deputy Chancellor
So
can do so.
you gonna add any more? Because my time is up and I have to listen to the chairs. See, they're playing me because I'm excited, because when it comes to students, to young kids, I want to have the best children in my district and in New York City. So I love summarizing. I love the program, and I want to have more questions, but I know when my hand is giving to me that I'm going to step back. This is not my hearing, but I will communicate more with you, because I think we can do a lot more with this program. Thank you so much for your service. Thank you, chairs.
Thank you, Councilmember Nurse. So I guess for me, I'm gonna jump right in. How did the late restorations of fund for middle school program impact providers' abilities to provide programming?
Thank you for that question. We were thrilled to have the middle school hours restored in the budget cycle, which included Fridays and late afternoons, as you know. Our providers were able to pivot very quickly and enhance those hours, modify staff schedules, hire additional staff as needed. We always have the goal of maximizing planning time. Planning time is like equal to high quality program, no question about it. In this case, we did have middle school programming set up. It was really just, enhancing the hours. So we are super grateful for our providers in terms of pivoting quickly to make sure middle school students had a full day.
Yeah, absolutely. Shout out to them, because pivoting at that late in the game is not easy, especially when we know that there's so many barriers, even around like hiring staff. We know that's not an easy task. So definitely shout out to them, but also we have to just do better, because that's just not okay, right? Has there been a formal evaluation done on Summer Horizon? If so, if no, why not? And is that something that we're looking to do in the future?
Thank you for the question. I'll jump in, and then you guys should add on top, obviously. There has not been a formal evaluation done, but we have looked at the program for continuous improvement for our own purposes across agencies in a couple of different ways. One of those ways is looking at academic impact of the program, which was something we started doing in 2023 and plan to do again for summer 2024, but have not done that yet. We looked at that academic piece in a couple of ways as well. One is we looked at our citywide screeners, so our assessments that we use across the system for everybody. So that's common system-wide. Folks are required to pick from a couple of assessments. When we looked at those, we found a statistically significant impact in math, particularly for our English language learners. We found a statistically significant impact in ELA for a number of our priority student subgroups. On the academic side, we will continue to look at that. We obviously want to keep doing better in that front, but that's what we found for summer 2023. On the academic side, we also do the, as Danielle mentioned, there are, and Chair Joseph, as you knew, there are assessments built in with the curriculum that are aligned with the curriculum themselves that folks are using. So we also look at those. Those also showed improvement across grades and subjects. I will say the other thing we look at as evaluation of the program is not just that, right? It's also how are our families, our students, our staff, our providers feeling about the program itself. We were really glad to see the report out yesterday. It gave us additional data, but we do also have our own survey data that we look at very, very closely. We had about 13,000 families complete that this year. We had, I think, in total about 6,000 students complete it this year. I'll check the data in a minute. And the data there is really overwhelmingly positive. It's one of the reasons we think there's more to the attendance issue.
Is it still more yes or no questions? As I remember that was a big thing, because I actually have not been able to look at the survey this year. But is it still more yes or no questions, or is there room, did you guys allow more room for anecdotes and more expression? Because I think sometimes, like, if you have a leading question, you're going to get the answer that you want. Because if you're asking the right questions, you're going to lead them down the road. And so of course your survey is going to say it's overwhelmingly positive, right? Where I'm looking at the survey that was done by UNH, that doesn't look as positive. It doesn't look negative, right? And I'm not saying that, but there are some discrepancies, because I don't want us to think just because some people don't have options. And so if you don't have an option, what you're going to say is trash. You're not going to say you put your child in a trash program. So
I will say, so two quick things, then we can talk about the specifics of the survey. Did not mean to imply there's not plenty of room to improve. Just did want to say
I told you guys in the beginning.
We have
you
improvement.
guys have actually been listening to the feedback. Like when we bring it back to you, you guys are coming back with answers. That's not what I'm applying at all.
So we do see improvements year over year, I would say. We have a survey person back there. We do work pretty hard to make sure we use legitimate surveys, statistical analyses, and all those sorts of things across this. But point taken, there are different versions. And yes, as a family, if you send your kids somewhere, you want to feel good about where you're sending them. We do ask specific questions about this part of the experience, about transportation, about academic portioning. We ask both students and families and staff and providers those questions. So it's not just, how do you feel, right? We do try and get more targeted
Even with the
information.
providers, y'all don't always go back and forth with the providers. Asking providers, you're the funder, and asking a provider how you feel about the program, they can't be that honest. So I keep telling y'all that we got to find a different way, because that don't work for me.
Is it anonymous at least?
Anonymous. They're still their funder.
Exactly.
Susan, did you hear that?
She's heard this before.
But I was just going to say, we do use that a lot for continuous improvement, because it is more targeted versus questions like, this is where we want to make improvements, this is where we want more field trips, all that kind of stuff.
Is this information public? And especially the academic piece around the evaluations and surveys and things like that? And if so, why not?
It's really something we've been using internally for continuous improvement. As we look towards our next evaluation cycle, it's definitely on our minds that we come here and end up sharing this with you, and so we will think about what makes sense to package and share.
Thank you, and I'd like to add that as the program director, for me, it's very important that we understand where the gaps are. So with this survey, this is my time to understand how can we improve. I'm very happy about this hearing today, because I'm ready. I'm ready to capture and implement many of the items and suggestions that you have said. But for example, in this survey, we even asked about yoga and mindfulness. We had a yoga and mindfulness curriculum, and we asked students, how did you feel? Did you even feel that we actually had live stream webinars that we talked about mindfulness. We actually showed yoga poses, and I wanted to know, these live streams, were they effective? And they were on the survey. And we asked that to both staff and to students, and we got our feedback. So for me, it's really about the work and about how do we improve. So we have open-ended questions. So to your question, is it only yes and or no? No, we have more intentional and again, open-ended questions. So I know in collaboration with DYCD and my peers here how to improve.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, Chair Stevens, we do a tremendous amount of evaluation, informal evaluation, formal evaluation. We have contracted with Policy Studies Associates, and we work really closely in the evaluations, our evaluation team, talking to New York City Public Schools evaluation teams. Let's not ask the same questions. Let's make sure we're enhancing and eliminating redundancies. So we work in really close partnership on those efforts.
Is your information made public?
I think, I feel the same, that it's been used for internal purposes largely. I feel we may have shared some of those with you over the course of the years, but we can look back and see what we can do. We're certainly not keeping any of the feedback secret. We've talked about it openly here. And I think that at DYCD we have program managers who go out on site visits, visit every single program. They have components around administration, program service, quality of activities, so we have individual evaluation monitoring tools that we activate as well each summer.
What supports are given to providers who are serving students with disabilities? This is a question to DYCD. What supports are given to providers who are serving students with disabilities? And while you get that information, I just want to also point out, I think one of the things that we were hearing, like, because of summarizing, this has opened up an opportunity for students with disabilities to have access to camp, where that wasn't something that was happening at this number before, which I think is a positive thing. But I also want us to make sure, as this is, I guess, still very new, this is a place where I want us to kind of dig in a little bit more around, like, what does that really look like? And, like, does it make sense that even in the afternoon portion, should they have differentiatory things, and how are we supporting staff on working with the population, and what does that look like to make sure that it's even more fulfilling for everybody? So I know you were looking through some stuff.
Yes, thank you for giving me that time. But to do a deep dive, we did provide professional learning opportunities for our CBOs, and as I mentioned before, this happened in person and remotely as well. Because that was feedback from last year when we implemented this, that they wanted more in-person opportunities, so we wanted to make sure that that was available to them. And some of the courses included creating routines and classroom rules, sensory supports and regulation strategies, preventing and addressing challenging behaviors, and all of that really was all the work that we did with the Office of Special Education. We had bi-weekly check-ins and escalation protocols as the program progressed, to make sure that what was taught and what was supported, right, during the program, we were able to address that and have folks on the ground. And then I'm going to hand it off to Andy to walk through those pieces and those supports.
I don't think your mic is on.
I think this was a lesson learned from prior years. We needed to start earlier, we needed to talk more frequently, and we needed a very clear escalation protocol. And all of those things were able to happen this year to great effect. When those escalations did occur, site staff received support from the Administrator of Special Education, which is a district staff member, directors of special education who work for the district, and directly from the special education office. And those supports are technical assistance, how do you do this thing, coaching, let me do it side by side with you, or on-site support, let me be right there in the room with you to support that particular child. We also had regular office hours, and those were places where CBO staff, where paras, where teachers could call in each week. I don't know how to support this student. What should I do? And had people who were specially trained to support students with our more intense support needs to be able to provide that support.
Thank you. So how are we supporting non-summarizing summer sites? Because as you guys know, community centers are near and dear to my heart. And I feel like a lot of times they are not getting the love and attention that they need, and they're working super hard over there. Their contracts have not been increased. They're doing all this work. They are the janitor, they are the cook, they are doing all the things. So what does support look like for them? How are we supporting them? What is going on? And I would love to hear what's happening. I mean, granted, I know they're doing their jobs, but how are you supporting them?
So I am glad you did bring that up.
Of course I brought it up. That's my first love.
Yeah, that's right. One of the main things we wanted to do was bolster up the curriculum. We had been implementing Exploring Futures, which is the college and career awareness component in summarizing, and we expanded that to not just for programs operating in your city public schools, but to cornerstones as well. We wanted to make sure that the same opportunities, the same trainings, there was no real net difference between what was being offered and what would be implemented between both spaces. So that was the key feature, and leading into the same supports and offering into the school year as well for middle school youth, again, regardless of Compass, Beacon, or Cornerstone. As well as in the summer, we provide facility support, right? So if there are any issues with the space as well, coordinating with NYCHA.
Not if, when. When there are facility issues.
When, yes. And deploying our folks out there to make those repairs quickly and address those escalations as well. So that was a big component that we lifted up this summer as well. Yeah, so the same, CBO convenings that we held throughout the planning stages, that was available to them as well, and even separately as well. Our Cornerstone team implemented their monthly check-ins in planning for their summer services.
We still need to get them new contracts, but I'll leave that for another day to fight about. Following reportable attendance, principals and program operators have called for a return of pre-COVID model of separate summer camp and academic programs. Has DYCD evaluated the different impacts between pre-COVID and current summer camp models, and there are steps to be taken to address the decline in attendance? And I just want to say, I know we spent a lot of time on attendance before, but I do want to reiterate, I understand why we do need to have a level of looseness in the summer model, but 68 is still very low. And just thinking about this budgetarily, when we're thinking about the amount of money we're putting into these programs, we want to have some type of impact. And so I'm not saying that it should be mandatory and those things, but we do have to think about what is the most effective, what the little resource, well, I don't think we have little resources, so I'm gonna take that back, with the resources that are being appropriated for these things. And so this has been a big call, and I mean, I'm one of the people that's been calling for it, to think about how do we return back to looking more about the pre-COVID model and having a lot more flexibility. And it probably would save us money.
Thank you for that question. I'll start. I think we spoke about much of that today in terms of the benefits of the model where we are now. I do think, again, the model has changed significantly since 2021. And I think, as I mentioned, in terms of the strengths of our partnerships, having, and I appreciate Angela brought up the mindfulness and yoga activities, because that is highlighting that in that 8 to 12 period, it's not just the curriculum, it's other kinds of activities going on, including enrichment activities with the elementary school CBO staff in the mornings. We have strengthened the accessibility of summer programming for students with disabilities, to your point, and we're super proud of that. We've been able to expand. Pre-COVID, we did not have a summer middle school model that went full day, Monday to Friday. A typical middle school model was about 108 total hours during the summer. So we've significantly strengthened the experience of middle school students, the robust scale and scope of the program that they get. Nurses were mentioned, transportation was mentioned. These are all benefits that come top of mind in terms of the strengths of our model, which we will continue to strengthen.
I think I would just like to add the fact that having this robust model is something we didn't have prior. And even on the operational side of things, having the support from New York City Public Schools in thinking about our prioritization of the most high need young people, that's something that was a significant challenge for CBOs to manage locally, especially when there's information that won't be privy to them in the application process. And being able to address those needs immediately is something I think, it's something worth keeping. And as we grow this model, looking for more continuous quality improvement.
I'm still troubled by the 30 students in a classroom for Summer Rising. Because when I taught summer school, we had about 10, 12 kids. If I had 30 now, my bags would have been packed and gone. Because it's a regular school year, right? So the point of summer school is to have that small group instruction. When do we have a chance to assess them? When do we know if they have enough support? If we have 30 kids in a classroom, one teacher, no matter how amazing educators are, someone is going to fall through the crack. And the purpose of them being there mandated is because they fell through the crack in the 10-month, and they have 6 weeks to make it out. So I'm still a little concerned and bothered about the class size for me. So maybe that's something we need to figure out. How many of those school buildings were accessible to our students with disabilities?
Choosing accessible sites for summarizing is a top priority. There are many factors that go into choosing summarizing sites, and a major factor is choosing from sites the school construction authority does not close entirely for renovation. So I want to, give you that context that we do have a smaller pool to choose from, again, because of renovation. But again, accessibility is a top priority. So in terms of numbers and percentages, fully accessible sites, we had 38%. So just so you know, we had 360 summarizing sites. And of those 360 summarizing sites, 38% were fully accessible, but another 30% were partially accessible. So in terms of fully and partially accessible, 68% of the summarizing sites were fully or partially accessible.
And which ones were not accessible at all for students, parents, and staffs with physical disabilities?
So we did have, in terms of not accessible, 4%, but we had another 100 buildings where we were still assessing the accessibility. But where we knew for sure were not accessible, 4%.
Yeah. Where was I? Oh, how many CBO contracts do DYCD administer for summarizing, and how many summarizing contracts does DOE administer?
So for DYCD, we had 293 contracts.
293 contracts. And I guess we could just stay there and then you guys will come over here. What's the average association of cost of those contracts, and what is the smallest contract amount?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
What's the smallest contract amount?
In terms of program size, we had programs as small as 25 seats and as large as 800.
And what's the average cost of those contracts? Like, because what's the price participant? Because that's what the real question is.
So for the elementary seat is $14.14.
14.
And for middle school, it is $13.20.
13, 20.
And we can get back to you on the average.
Thank you. DOE? Oh,
In terms of CBO contracts, we don't. We have things like bus
Okay.
contracts and
okay.
all that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
that's the next question. I'll let her ask her if she wants to ask. The NYCPS portion of Summer Rising was originally funded through temporary federal stimulus funding that has now expired. Last January, the mayor announced that the city would pick up the $80 million that had previously been funded through federal funding, but this funding has not been baseline, and the mayor did not commit to this funding beyond 2024. What is the status of this conversation for funding for Summer Rising 2025?
Thank you for the question. So yes, this is one of a series of our stimulus cliff programs that were funded for 1 year and not in all of the out years. The conversations are ongoing. We certainly very much hope to have that funding to fill that cliff and make sure we can continue to provide this next summer.
When do you think we would know? Because, time is a ticking. Because, before you know, it'll be January, and so can't wait until March to say we have funding.
I don't know when we will know, but it's certainly already a topic of our ongoing conversations. Last year, this is something that happened in the January plan, which was adequate time for us to collectively plan for the summer or to get things up and running. We're already planning, but adequate time for us to really get
started.
started.
You guys are already in the midst of planning for 2025, although there's no funding. Got it. So I'm gonna ask some questions about the legislation. And I guess for me, the first question would be around Intro 700. And I guess my question is more around, I know that DYCD is already doing work around college preparedness and access and all that stuff. That's just the work that we do. And so is the reservation around this legislation because of lack of funding? because we're already doing this work, so why wouldn't we just kind of like solidify it?
Well, I think it's a good question. We absolutely support the notion, focused, I think, on 11th and 12th graders in the legislation, of expanding information, access, experiences for young people to support college access. I don't think DYCD has the kind of robust connection with 11th and 12th graders that can be really relied upon, as I'm reading the legislation, to actually walk students through the college application
You
process.
know
and
we
those
do this work
resources.
regularly, especially in our cornerstones and those programs where students who often don't have a connection with schools go in and do this work. So that's why I'm asking, is it because of funding that this might be reservation around the legislation? Because I can do that and say, okay, well, let me go out here and figure out the money. But like, I feel like we're already doing the work, and so is it the funding that's the issue? Because the work is happening.
I agreed, and we don't want to walk away from that work. We want to continue to support the work that New York City Public Schools is doing around 11th and 12th graders in college access. I don't think our reach is robust enough to be relying on DYCD-funded programs across 11th and 12th graders to have the kind of impact I think you're asking for across the board. I think that happens with New York City Public Schools. But where we have connections through Cornerstones or Beacon, other programs with 11th and 12th graders, we appreciate like the sentiment, the value here about the important role that after-school programs can play in supporting college access.
Yeah, I just want us to like kind of like just look at it a little bit further, because like one, I think to say that we're going to leave it to DOE, that doesn't make sense to me, right? We just sat here for 3 hours talking about how the collaboration, this is another place where we should be collaborating on, because again, we should be touching students at all the different points. And so that's why I even led with, is it a lack of funding? And then I can go out here and like try to find the money, opposed to it being like, oh, we don't have the reach. Because I know for a fact, you know for a fact, this work is being done on a regular basis. And we know a lot of times these programs are catch areas for students because they're not getting the support in DOE. Right? We know that a lot of times they end up in our community centers asking for college support and our cornerstones and beacons because they're not getting that support and it's not there. So I think we should definitely continue to talk and have some more feedback around that, and even get your feedback or reservations around why this will look like, what it would look like if it did go through. I guess my next question was around Intro 794. Because I know you talked about in your testimony that the youth board, one, I'll start with even like the youth board currently has 3 mayor appointees who are under the age of 25. We know that that's not the norm, and it should be, because people who are closest to the problem should be the one making the solutions. And we often have, which is my pet peeve, conversations about young people and what we believe is best, and they're not part of the conversation. And so, yeah, we have people under the age of 25, but that's not the norm. And so for me, we do need to get to a place where young people are also part of the decision-making process and advising us when we need to see. And so that's one of the main reasons why it's like this is important to me. And so I was just a little bit thrown back on like, why wouldn't that be something that a youth agency would support?
Youth voice, connection with youth groups to provide feedback to our program, 100%. DYCD engages, for example, in the Runaway and Homeless Youth Services program area with the Youth Action Board. We're very connected with young people with lived experience to hear their feedback. DYCD also operates youth councils and youth boards. We facilitated youth town halls to get feedback where young people express their concerns about resources for mental health and public safety. We want to do as much youth engagement as possible. I think our feedback to this bill is around the value of having young people along with adults who can potentially support programming by providing access to businesses and the opportunity to enhance programming. So we want to have youth voice, we want to strengthen youth voice. We're exceeding our, the requirements in terms of youth voice on the youth board. That's something that's very important to Commissioner Howard. And we have many other ways we want to engage with young people to help and provide feedback and inform program offerings.
And even the statement around the youth board in the panel, where it's like, oh, we don't want, like, I get that you want to make sure that you have a variety of experiences, but like, there are people who work in the private sector that has experience with young people. Would you hire someone in DYCD if they had no experience before? I mean, why would we not have some type of requirement or criteria when we're thinking about putting together boards around, like, how does this connect to the work? And so I think that even when we're saying things like, oh, we want to, the private sector, there's lots of people working in the private sector who's worked with young people before. There's a lot of areas or have some relevant experience. And so that's where we're trying to get at. Like, I understand we want to have diversity, but we also want to make sure that there is some relevant experience so we can have real robust advisement and not just saying like, oh, that's the mayor boy, so he put him on a board, or oh, the council's going to appoint this person because we can't find nobody. And so being on the side, it is important that we are putting some criteria and guardrails around who is on these boards. I don't have any more questions right now.
I do. Can you walk me through, first let me recognize Councilmember Shulman. Thank you for being here. Wanted to find out, what does the programming look like for English language learners?
And this is for summarizing. We have concrete both programs and support for English language learners that include enriching opportunities, going on field trips to the UN, experiencing cultural experiences, as well as working on developing English skills. And these programs are concentrated right now at a variety of schools. I'd like to provide you a specific summary of each of the supports that we provide, and I'd love to send that as a follow-up after this session.
Okay, how many English language learners did you serve this year? And how do you make accommodations for our students who are facing the 60-day shelter rule?
In terms of how many English language learners we served this year, in summarizing, 23,794. They make up 20% of the enrollment, 20.7% of the enrollment for summarizing. I do want to add to what Andy has said. In terms of offerings, we run a plethora of programs for multilingual learners. We even have additional, not even with summarizing, additional specific summer programming in conjunction with a separate program whereby they go deeply in terms of instruction with multilingual learners. That's what they're doing the entire day.
Is that with bilingual educators, ESL teachers, or?
Correct. And even with a specific multilingual learner community-based organization as well.
How many students you have in elementary and middle school that are ENL, English language learners?
I don't have that breakdown. I can get back to you on that.
You'll get back to me on that? You know, I'll write a letter. Just wanted a quick, for our students in District 75 classes, what is New York City Public School doing to ensure that students in District 75 are participating in class during the day and can stay in the same school building and participate in the afternoon session?
Great question. The initial budgeting process for 2025 Summer Rising does include the cost for District 75 students additional to stay in the same building for the afternoon portion. And we're hoping to be able to provide that programming so they can stay in the same building from the morning time, their academic, to the afternoon.
In the afternoon time, that includes what, till 3 o'clock or till 6 o'clock?
All the way till 6 o'clock. They're eligible
All the way
to
to
attend
6 p.m.?
All the way to 6.
Is New York City Public Schools looking to cite more Summer Rising program in the same school building as the District 75 students?
Yes.
And what's the goal for next year? How many classes are you looking to open?
Right now, we have requested funding to have...
Speak a little louder. Folks can't hear you.
Sure. So right now, we've requested funding to have 10 hub sites, 2 in each borough. And we looked at the data in terms of how many students applied to summarizing, so that is why we have that number in terms of 10 hub sites, looking at previous data. And the hub sites will provide full-day programming. So After the academic programming for this, which is specific to D75, then they will now have the enrichment with the appropriate content experts serving D75. Again, we utilized historical data for that.
Okay. Have you, the city explored partnering with CBOs that have experience working with students with disabilities, or what type of vendors are you looking to hire for our students in District 75?
Thank you. New York City Public Schools consistently partners with DYCD to build the capacity of all CBOs to support students with IEPs. We have seen CBO capacity to support students with IEPs increase from year to year, which has been phenomenal. And New York State Public Schools is committed to supporting the development of CBO enrichment programs that are inclusive as possible, including for our students with the most intense support needs.
And does that include staff, teachers that have inclusion specialists to help support these students in D75 so they can fully participate in the afternoon summarizing program?
Yes, this summer, DOE staff and specialists provided the support at multiple sites, and were able to resolve each escalation where the CBO raised their hand and said, this is not going okay, I need additional specialist assistance. We are also looking to say, can we do a borough-based specialist who really has that expertise in terms of inclusion and accessibility, particularly for challenging behaviors, so that that person is able to be even more responsive as a resource and proactive to both build capacity but also respond to questions and challenges.
And that specialist will be in the summarizing and the afternoon program supporting the CBOs who may not have staff that are familiar with that type of setting.
Exactly.
Okay, see, Councilmember Stevens will be very happy to hear that. So for summarizing 2025, will transportation be provided for students who qualify for busing, who don't want to participate in the CBO, afternoon CBO-led programming?
I think I understood the question. At this point, we're continuing to look at options, but what we can offer right now is busing at 3 p.m. And then for mandated students, students with disabilities, students in temporary housing, students in the foster system, rideshare availability after that.
So if it's for the summer of 2024, how many of our students qualified for they were eligible for bus service, and how many of those students were also part of the prepaid rideshare for afternoon transportation?
Turned it off instead of on. For this past summer, we bused about 57,000 students. Just as a note, that's up about 17,000 students over the past 2 years. We are seeing more and more students ride our buses. So that's the busing number. The rideshare number, about 1,500 students utilized rideshare.
I have a question from a middle school student who said if they're not mandated for the morning portion of summarizing, can they just come in the afternoon? All middle school kids want to know. This is a hot burning question.
Yes, this is a hot burning question. When you sign up for summarizing, you sign up for the full day of summarizing. However, in every year of the past few years, we have communicated to families and to CBOs that if you want to have a modified schedule, you'll have to have a letter signed from your parent, because there's a safety issue here. If you're a middle school student and you're not showing up till 12, we want to make sure that your parent knows about that. So we do allow for that kind of exception. We don't encourage it. We want you to be signing up for the full day. We want you with us for the full day, but we will allow it. CBOs know that, families know that. And frankly, I don't have data on this in front of me, but I don't think we've had a lot of uptick on that opportunity.
Yeah, so now the kids, if they're watching, they'll hear that. now there's going to be an uptick. Some CBOs had reported issues with my school, DYCD Connect during the enrollment process for Summer Horizon 2024. How does New York City Public Schools coordinate with DYCD to ensure seamless enrollment for students?
So leading up to each phase of the application process, from the application release to when the offers were being made to the waitlist process. With our ongoing series of convenings, we had New York City Public Schools present and go through each phase of the portal. On the back end, we've been working really hard with New York City Public Schools and making sure that the data between both agencies, right, and make that process as seamless as possible. But as you can imagine, pounds and pounds of data going across two different city agencies, and we were able to do that seamlessly as well. So that's a big infrastructure win in terms of the work that gets done. But that doesn't go without the number of potential challenges, right? Because it is a different system than what folks are typically using throughout the school year. They are used to DYCD Connect, and now that shift to My Schools could present a number of challenges, including access to the portal itself. So whenever those issues did come up, we were able to escalate and provide support throughout the process. But we hope that as we continue and to utilize the same system, because that's the other piece, right? We went from a different system prior, and this one being new and enhanced, that the ongoing out years will be much more improved.
When My Schools face technical problems and DYCD Connect impact the enrollment process for families, because my school, for the middle school process recently, had a glitch. So hopefully we'll perfect it. Every year, even when I was an educator, the system always broke down. Is there any way that's gonna be fixed, upgraded? Emma?
That felt personal. So, just so we're clear, there were some issues recently. There weren't issues with Summer Rising last year in terms of technical issues, and that was actually despite the fact that Summer Rising enrollment is larger than any of our grade band enrollments. It was actually something the team worked very hard, the technology team, the enrollment team, to make sure we were ready for that, because it was bigger than anything we've done before in terms of number of students, and it did go smoothly. In terms of other issues, we are happy to talk more about them. We are continuously working to improve and ensure we can meet the more flexible needs of the types of offers we want to be able to make to students and upgrade between us and Leanna and Travonda and team, and we will continue to do that. The truth is, the adaptability of My Schools is really quite useful for us at New York City Public Schools. They can change an enrollment policy, we can go make it happen, which would be different in a different sort of vendor system, but we do believe in the long term we need to upgrade and do plan to do that.
So you're working in real time to troubleshoot My School if it decides to break down?
Around the clock, 24 hours a day over the past few weeks, yes. And then we had a nice celebratory breakfast between our teams.
Well, thank you. Has New York City Public Schools received feedbacks from families on whether they prefer centralized My School enrollment process or the previous program-specific enrollment process? What are the parents saying?
So as mentioned, we explained that we had a survey to over 13,000 families. I mean, they filled out the survey. So they're happy. And I'm actually going to read just a few excerpts on how they feel about My Schools. Almost all, 97% of parents knew how to enroll their child in Summer Rising, and 96% agreed that the instructions for signing up for Summer Rising in My Schools were clear and helpful. The vast majority of responding parents were satisfied with the program's application and enrollment process and site location. In addition, 92% of parents enrolled their children in the summer program location. Let me read that again. In addition, 92% of parents who enrolled their children in the summer program, they were able to do so in the location they wanted. And Leanna, would you like to add to that?
No, I think, yeah, we agree. Parents seemed happy. And we're looking forward to continuing to do it.
No, you have to talk into the mic.
Daniel really touched on this, but I do also want to just say, so we do have good feedback from families. We'll also continue to work and make it better. From our collective perspective, the things we were able to do system-wide by having a centralized process that used My Schools in terms of a fair, equitable process, moving away from first come, first serve, being able to prioritize our most vulnerable students, being able to plop kids right off the wait list and into the system in a common way, giving families more information about where sites are, about where actual waitlist seats are, open seats are, where they are in the wait list. There are just a lot of upsides, we think, for families, almost all of which were directly responsive to feedback from you all or families along the way. So we'll continue to work to improve, but we do think we've made a lot of progress in some of those shared system-wide goals.
How many students did you provide with MetroCard for the summer, for Summer Rising?
I believe it is about 250,000, 256,000. That's not just Summer Rising, that's all students for summer.
That's for all summer, okay.
Yeah.
Are any steps taken to align in the academic and enrichment portion of the day to create a cohesive experience for students?
Cohesive experience, AM and PM.
You know, that togetherness
Okay.
that we've been talking about.
Yes. I think one data point we have around that is that we had more submissions or responses around the collaborative planning tool this summer than ever before. Some of the things in the past summers that you've been calling for is opportunities to meet CBO and schools in advance, opportunities to talk about where the scheduling is, what rooms are going to be used, and what activities are going to be implemented. We see more and more joint activities being planned in terms of special events. So we've really seen that collaboration on what's going to happen throughout the day increase.
So the blended curriculum for elementary students also incorporates your programming together, right?
For an elementary student, and I appreciate that question because you mentioned like a robustly attended academic classroom, but for elementary school students, CBO staff are part of that, bringing enrichment activities and energy into that, infused into the morning part of the day.
See, Councilmember Stevens, do you hear that? Are CBOs provided with curriculum and lesson plan prior to implementation during academic programming? Is that provided prior to that?
Correct, and which is, I'm glad Susan did bring up the fact that we had record numbers of schools and CBOs filling out the collaborative planning tool. The collaborative planning tool has a section where the principals must list out the curriculum to the CBO provider, so yes.
I would also like the record to show that I've been talking about this collaboration tool, and this is one of my recommendations, so I'm happy it's happening. Thank you.
The collaborations. So, for example, we have 110,000 slots. Let's say you get 120 students. What would it cost to just accept all 120,000 students? It's a budget question.
I mean, it's a two-part, right? Because it's us now finding more opportunities to find more CBOs, right?
Okay.
It's also worth noting, right? We wanna be thoughtful about what this means to expand, and even in this current process, when there were opportunities to increase number of seats because we were looking at applications, we had to be thoughtful about that expansion because we want to make sure that, you know, on the ground CBOs are able to provide those support effectively. But also, you know, there's other costs to that as well, right? When you open up more seats, that means more space, right? More supports, because if we're prioritizing more youth, they may need other additional para supports, transportation, buildings, meals, right? So it's kind of a price tag that goes dot.
Do you have a number?
That's a great question that we'll have to.
We don't have a number. I will say on our side, because of the way the costs work, it'll be very hard for us to give a precise for this many kids, this many things. As you know, things like busing, facilities, even teachers in a classroom, nurses, they're not a per student cost. And so it'll be challenging to do it in that way, but we can certainly work with DYCD to talk about the cost of sites and stuff like that.
I would actually love for us to focus on getting the attendance up from 68 to higher than talking about expansion. That actually was stressing me out, because I think we're at a critical moment of like evaluations, because some of the things I think that came up today is even thinking about the students who are mandated versus students who are not mandated, and there's some bumps and that we still need to work out, and thinking about, you know, this one-size-all-fit model is not working. So what are some things that we can do before we start to expand it? So before y'all start crunching your numbers, let's actually stay here and focus on what it is before we expand. Because we're going to expand at some point, right? Like, we're going to get to universal childcare and after school and all these things, but I think we need to, like, make sure we have worked out all the kinks before we even get there. So I know where we're going, but we ain't there yet.
I very much appreciate that question. We mentioned many, and we could say more about the things that we did to increase attendance. That's a goal for all of us, to maximize participation. Why? So more families can get in. And one of the things that we did this year was over-enroll high-demand sites, because we have the data about what kids are attending. And so we work to ensure to our providers, like, if you're getting 100 in 100 seats, we're not anticipating you need to serve any more than 100 students. This is something that we also saw in the UNH report, and I wanted to say, like, that's one of the things we attempted to do to increase attendance rates, and we're going to keep trying. This over-enrollment, not because there was an expectation to serve more young people, but because we see the data patterns now, and we know that we can push a little bit further.
How do you track success? How do you track success on the academic side and also on the activity side? How do you know you got it right?
So I think on the academic side, it's the measures we talked about before. It's the screeners we look at citywide. It's also the assessments built into the curricula, aligned with the curricula, and those are what we're looking at and continuing to look at. We also are interested in how our staff and students are feeling about the feedback, are feeling about the experience, and that gets into the survey, which also gets into our enrichment activities.
Internally as well, we do have working groups at New York City Public Schools. We have working groups for superintendent points, and we also have a principal advisory as well. So in fact, very soon before the end of the year, those groups will be up and running, and we want to hear feedback from them as well. But of course, as mentioned, we do have working groups with DYCD on various topics, on special ed. So we sit back to say, what are the key performance indicators internally that we need to improve upon? So long story short is that we have working groups to assess gaps and continuously improve. In addition to, of course, the impact analysis, in addition to the surveys.
Do you have a number of how many mandated students you had for the summer, and how many went on to move on to the next grade?
Yes, so we had a total of, this year, we had a total of around 10,300 mandated students.
And how many of them were able to successfully move on to the next grade? You'll
That
get back to me?
information I don't have at this time, but we'll get you that. We'll get you that information.
Because that's how we're also going to measure our success, right? How many of our students were mandated and how many of them were able to move on to the next grade. And that's also going to be the way where we're going to look, how do we plan for next year, right? So, yeah.
I agree, that's a strong key performance indicator, correct.
Of course. Thank you. All transportation contracts are through New York City Public Schools?
Yes.
If yes, how many are there and what are the associated costs with that?
I don't know how many there are for the summer in particular. I will get you that number. Some are summer only, some are extensions of school year contracts. As you know, we have 100 contracts generally for busing overall. The overall cost of busing for this last summer was roughly $100 million.
Does the contract extend as an extension or from the contract that you already have?
Do you mean the big extension, or
Yeah.
do you mean the summer?
Just the summer.
Yeah, so some of summer is summer-specific contracts, and some is the rest of a school year contract.
Rest of the school year contract, okay.
But they're
thank
the
you for that.
same, they have both have the same rigidity around what's in them.
Thank you. What outstanding summarizing funding exists in FY25? If there any funding left over for the upcoming summer, do you anticipate New York City Public School and DYCD would have to add funding for the upcoming summer?
I'm not aware of that.
The pot is empty?
Yeah, I'm not aware that we have any leftover funding.
I know.
We also do not have leftover funding for next year.
Okay, good. Okay. Does New York City Public Schools spend 2024, how much did you spend for 2024 Summer Rising program on rideshare program, and how many families utilized it?
About 1,500 families utilized it, and we spent about 108,000. Can I say one? Yeah, sorry, no, that's okay. I just want to say one clarifying thing about the busing costs. As you know, all of our students ride on buses together. That's not just the Summer Rising cost, that's the cost of busing students generally in summer.
Good. All right, we're good. So thank you. Let's work on our attendance, curriculum, bring down the 30 kids in a classroom. This is where class size has to come in. Emma, this is where class size has to come in.
I want you to know, Chair, I was sitting here waiting for that exact comment, so thank you. It's a strong finish.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And we look forward to seeing you soon in partnership. Thank you, Micah.